What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. Hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you have been enjoying night 2 of the 2025 NFL Draft. We are live in the Bleacher Report app, breaking down everything that the Dallas Cowboys have done. Did this after the first round, obviously, when the Cowboys took Tyler Booker. We have 2 new picks to get to, and the round is currently going as we are talking. So keeping an eye on things. We just saw Caleb Johnson this second go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm waiting on my guy Cam Scadaboo to find a new home. But the Dallas Cowboys have turned in their picks, and unless we see some sort of trade up, which would be kind of shocking at this point, given the fact that Dallas doesn't have a 4th round pick, they are done for the night, and we will see the Cowboys once again in the 5th round. Sunday will obviously be a busy day for them, and I will be live once again after the NFL draft concludes on, did I say Sunday? On Saturday. Either way, to discuss the class as a whole once undrafted free agency begins. Obviously, this is a long weekend. It's a very fun weekend if you follow the NFL. And I think this is turning into a very fun weekend for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, full disclosure, hand up. Last night as we worked through the live show, and as those of you who watched on YouTube saw, had to kind of work through and process the emotions of the Cowboys drafting Tyler Booker and coming to terms with the fact that they didn't go wide receiver. Obviously, Ted McMillan wasn't available, so it's not like that was a choice. It's not like they chose Tyler Booker over Ted McMillan. I think we all believe that had McMillan fallen to 12, that Dallas might have pulled the trigger there. That being said, they didn't, and I think we all ultimately made our peace or came to terms with, or however you want to put it, and ultimately accepted that the Tyler Booker pick was in the best interest of the team from a long-term perspective. And so the hands up thing for me is I tweeted on Friday that if the Cowboys did not address the running back wide receiver positions on Friday, that it would be fair to criticize them. I said that, and I do think that it's fair to criticize them. I already wrote something at bloggingtheboys.com that went out about an hour ago in real time for me. If you're watching live in the Bleacher Report app, obviously, if you're on YouTube, you can go check this out at your own convenience. But I do think it's fair to criticize their roster construction process from a macro perspective. I still don't see anything from Cam Scadaboo. So I'm keeping one eye over here. I want to make sure, because that's my guy. I really want him to go somewhere where I can root for him. But that being said, the Cowboys didn't draft Cam Scadaboo, and they didn't draft any running back. They didn't draft any wide receiver. The Cowboys on Friday spent their 2 picks and drafted a brand new pass rusher, brand new edge rusher, and Donovan Ezeiruaku. And as of the moment that we're here talking now, also addressed the secondary and took Shavon Revel out of East Carolina. So we've seen the Cowboys now through their top 100 picks, and these are their most premium assets by way of the NFL draft. And again, as I already said, they don't have a 4th round pick. So, I also tweeted, this is a very hectic moment, right? The moment after the Cowboys make a pick, we're all kind of processing and figuring it out. But I tweeted before the Cowboys made the Shavon Revel pick that this pick was going to tell us a lot about their view and their thoughts and their disposition on the draft class as a whole, because they didn't have the 4th round pick. Remember last year when they didn't have the 4th round pick because of the Trey Lance trade, we were screaming, get your running back now, because the run is going to happen on running backs in the 4th round. You're not going to be able to do anything about it. And they didn't. They took Maris Liufau, and that worked out. I think we all really like Maris Liufau, but this pick in a similar way was going to tell us something. This was the guy you had to have, that you didn't want to let go because you weren't going to be able to get him in the 5th round when you're back on the clock. And so we've seen the Cowboys from a positional standpoint now in the 1st round address the interior of their offensive line and add another foundational piece to the future of the group, obviously 3 times in 4 years now in the 1st round. But beyond that, we've seen the Cowboys on Friday address edge rusher and corner. Now, I don't think any of you, I don't think there's a single person out there who's watching this, whether you're live. I see you, Hot Mike User says, man, they needed linebacker 3. All right, I think you're talking about Luther Burden the third. That was a bummer. That was a real big bummer to watch Burden go early in the 2nd round. And I think if he'd made it, and they're going to tell us something like that in their press conference on Friday, the same way they did McMillan, that if he'd made it, they would have taken him. I fully believe that, but he didn't. And I will give them props for letting the board fall to them. The picks they have made so far, and the picks they made particularly on Friday night in Ezeiruaku and in Revel, are extreme value picks and really talented players. And obviously the Shavon Revel thing, he's dealing with the injury, and the Dallas Morning News already reported that he should be good to go by July. Let's see here. Shador Sanders. Oh no, I'm just seeing words fly on my computer screen. So making sure we're good. But that being said, I don't know a single person who did any mock draft that did not address running back or wide receiver in their first 2 picks. And maybe you did, maybe you are a mock draft sicko and you did like 5,000 of them and you just kind of wanted to see what one would look like. And maybe you were cool with it. And so maybe you're cool with this now. But I would bet that of all the mock drafts you did in your first 2 picks, you at least touched one of running back or receiver. Maybe you didn't touch them both. And I know we did a lot where we did. A lot of us wanted to go Ted McMillan in the first and Quinshon Judkins in the second. And Luther Burden didn't make it to the Cowboys on Friday night, and neither did Quinshon Judkins, went very early to Cleveland. And so I mean, I don't know that any of us kind of foresaw this, but these are important steps. These are necessary steps. They're mandatory steps. These are steps that the Cowboys have to be taking in order. We got the Chiefs trading up now. Maybe this is Cam's guy, but we'll see. But these are steps that the Cowboys have to make and have to take in order to become a legitimate roster, an overall roster, a roster that isn't top heavy. And that's what they've been in years past. They absolutely have needs at running back and wide receiver. I'm completely with all of us. But these are areas where Sam Williams gets hurt last year and you don't have anybody, right? You're talking about your cornerback room now has been very, very, very suspect for a long time, and not stable, I guess is maybe the best way, because we haven't been able to see Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland play together. And I know we have questions right now. What does Trayvon Diggs' future look like? Is Deron Bland going to get the extension? Well, now you just bought some time. Now you have plugged a would-be hole. Corner is not a hole right now in the way that running back and wide receiver are. But the reason that running back and wide receiver are holes in these ways is because they weren't addressed like this. They are positions that have been ignored. And so I'm not advocating for the continued ignorance of the positions, but I mean, this is something that, Jacob Parrish just went to the Buccaneers. So things are happening fast and flying really quickly now. Hot Mike User says, I just don't see how they can go into the season with this skill group. I agree with you. And if we take the Cowboys at their word, which is a very dangerous proposition, I'm waiting to see what the Chiefs did, what they went to trade up for. Man, good for the Steelers, man, getting Caleb Johnson. I think we would have been thrilled. I'm not mad about the Shavon Revel pick, but I think I understand wanting a running back. MC77 says, I mean, they drafted needs, but what are they going to do about another receiver and running back? Caleb Johnson from Iowa still on the board. I'm sorry, I just saw your comment. That is not happening, obviously. Let's see here. Still don't know what the Chiefs are doing, but either way, not addressing running back and receiver are huge, huge areas of concern. And Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones have said in their time since the pre-draft press conference, the Chiefs have traded up for Noel Williams. Okay, so now at least that is solved. They could still address trades. I mean, George Pickens is a name that's been thrown out a lot, obviously. Breece Hall is a name that's been thrown out a lot, obviously. I mean, if you told me that at the end of this weekend, I don't mean to say that I don't care about what happens tomorrow, because day 3 matters. It isn't as important, obviously, because these aren't top 100 selections. But so let's just assume Saturday goes relatively chalk for the Cowboys. But if you told me with their top 100 picks, they came away with Tyler Booker, Donovan Ezeiruaku, and Shavon Revel, and added by way of trade some future projected compensatory pick allotments, whatever, Breece Hall and George Pickens. I know that we have thoughts about George Pickens or whatever the case may be, but that would be fine. And I think that ultimately, if I allow myself to really hope and really maybe even cope, I hope that this proves to the Cowboys, because I think their draft philosophy is not only fine, but I think very sound and very legitimate. I think that being patient and letting the board fall to you is how you get these insane values. It's the same way that we look at what the Eagles do every year and we applaud them for it, or the Ravens or whoever, because they take care of their roster all the time so they can afford to do something like this. They don't have to draft for need the way we've seen the Cowboys do in years past. I would offer somewhat of the way we saw them spend their first round pick last year in Tyler Guyton. And so when you take care of your roster in a careful way, you're flexible enough to do these things. The Cowboys just didn't do that first part. And so my hope copium sort of idea or thought is that, did the Magic the Magic just won. There's a lot happening in the world of sports apparently right now, is that the Cowboys are looking at this and saying, damn, you know what? This is pretty cool. Like, this is pretty cool to just sit here and take these badasses that are falling to us. It is cool. It's very cool. And we will give you props for these picks. This was an A+ night for the Cowboys. If we're grading it from the perspective of the talent that they added to the team, it was an A+ night. Now, if you came in and said they have to address running back and receiver like I did, and I am about facing a little bit because I'm seeing what they're doing. We obviously are always allowed to kind of change our mind when information processes and changes. If you're evaluating this from a did they fill their needs standpoint, it was kind of a failure. And this should prove to them that you have to be somewhat aggressive in free agency. Now, we saw them act like adults, like competent adults in free agency this offseason. And that was, important and interesting. But, do we feel great about, Javonte Williams or Miles Sanders at running back right now? No. Do we feel great about receiver because you added Paris Campbell? No. Those are positions that had you, and again, we're not even asking for a lot, but had you been the team to take, had you brought Brandon Cooks back or something, and that's not even the move I would have preferred, but if you had done something like that, you would have hedged this bet a little bit more. And that's really what you have to forecast the bets that you need to hedge is maybe the best way to put what free agency needs to be for the Cowboys. That's kind of the one area of foresight that they're lacking in, because I do think that this draft is representing a lot of foresight from the Cowboys. They are addressing future issues and making sure, ensuring that they don't become future issues. I think that Friday night is pure proof of that with Donovan Ezeiruaku and with Shavon Revel. Let's look at some of your comments. Jay Cabrera 2355 says we really do need to make some type of outside moves for a receiver and a running back, but the picks themselves are great picks. Totally agree. We have to be willing to acknowledge these two truths coexisting, right? If you're trying to marry these ideas, that's where we're going to butt heads. And I don't mean you and I, Jay Cabrera, I mean just overall philosophy. Still nothing on anybody else. But that being said, you have to separate this. We can accept that the Cowboys failed at approaching running back or receiver in responsible manners. That is a failure. That is an indictment. We have to have a serious conversation about that, although I would offer that we've kind of been having that conversation for a long time. But relative to what they're doing in the draft, this is fantastic work. And this really does kind of separate, or I think, if I'm allowed to be honest here, by the way, John Machota, friend of the show from The Athletic, just tweeted out that Shavon Revel said on The Fan that he feels like he'll be back on the field from his knee injury in time for training camp. So that's great to hear. And again, this was the Cowboys. We know they love to kind of take these value picks and draft guys that would have been first rounders if not for this. In Shavon Revel's case, it was the injury. This is still a little rich of a time to do that, but this was a calculated risk to take. Obviously, Dr. Cooper is the surgeon who worked on Shavon Revel, and the Cowboys know him. We've talked about that, exact occurrence happening many times before in the past. So I'm okay with that. But you have to be able to, I think the thing I was going to say that I didn't want to get in trouble for with you all was I think sometimes Will McClay gets a little overrated. I think sometimes we give a lot, maybe too much credit to Will McClay because we believe everybody else in the front office is really bad at their job. So we're kind of just, it becomes uneven. You know what I'm saying? This is proof that Will McClay is in his bag, that Will McClay and his staff are elite at what they're doing, the way they're operating, their ability, the scouting department, their ability to find and identify talent that matches up with would-be needs or somewhat needs or kind of needs for the Cowboys. I mean, they deserve raises. It's again on the front office that's in charge. I don't want to say even the pro scouting department for the Cowboys, but the front office that's in charge of acquiring and accruing that talent, and they are the ones that is the one kind of chink in the armor right now that this team is trying to rebuild their image sort of in the image of. And so if the front office can just apply the same level of oomph and apply the same level of aggression and forward thinking to this idea, then you're really cooking with gas overall. But that is still kind of holding the team back from an overall roster construction standpoint. Excuse me. MC77 says, so what are your legit thoughts on what they will do for another receiver and running back? I think they will trade for somebody. I really do. They simply, I mean, no ill will towards the professional athletes currently on the Dallas Cowboys roster at running back and wide receiver. Obviously, outside of CeeDee Lamb, they don't have a proper NFL running back room right now. They simply do not. They have Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, and Deuce Vaughn. That's it. Like, that's all they have going on right now. That simply cannot work. I fully believe that they will draft somebody this weekend. I think they will absolutely walk away with somebody on Saturday. It won't be one of these top guys. Obviously, we all understand that the position is deep. And so I think it will still be somebody that will garner some level of hype and some level of interest. And if the offensive line can be as legitimate as, they're hoping and we're hoping that it can be, then, everything can work in perfect harmony. But I think they will absolutely still spend a draft pick on the position. And I think that they'll probably execute a trade. And again, if you told me, let's just use my guy as an example here. If they were to draft Cam Scadaboo on Saturday afternoon and trade for Breece Hall, and your running back room looks something like Breece Hall as the leader of the group, Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders as veterans, older veterans who can help you, and Cam Scadaboo is your kind of young, new Deuce Vaughn. Obviously, Deuce Vaughn's the odd man out in that conversation, unfortunately. Then I think all of that works. All of that works really, really, really well. And hopefully you learn the lesson for the future that you can't just procrastinate, and hope that this problem figures itself out because you want to bring Zeke back one year. So as far as wide receiver is concerned, I think that the approach will be similar. I fully expect them to draft somebody, but I don't think that the contribution can be the same. I think we've seen that from the day 3 receivers this team has drafted over the last couple of years. Ryan Flournoy, Jalen Brooks, they've had moments, obviously, of positivity, but even the last receiver who they drafted on day 2 in Jalen Tolbert hasn't materialized into anything. And so you have CeeDee Lamb. Again, he's a dude. But right now you're going to play a football game with him and Jalen Tolbert and Jonathan Mingo and Kevontae Turpin, I suppose. And I've said many times that Kevontae Turpin has proved me wrong and that he can contribute on offense. But you simply can't rely on that. So they have to go out and trade for somebody. And they obviously are interested. I think the Shavon Revel pick is an example of this, in value that is maybe suppressed for one reason or another. Maybe the Steelers all of a sudden after the draft are more willing to part with somebody like George Pickens, and George Pickens obviously has suppressed his own value to some degree. And sort of like we talked about with the running back position, if the wide receiver group on Sunday looks something like CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Jonathan Mingo, Jalen Tolbert, Ryan Flournoy, Jalen Brooks, and another rookie, then okay, you have some legitimate options, but you can't leave them alone. You can't ignore them. They have to go add before this weekend is over, whether that's on Saturday or by way of veteran acquisition, which would obviously involve a trade. Let's see here. There's some tweets going off. Jamari Caldwell goes to the Chargers. Savion Williams going to the Packers. Okay, maybe this is where Cam Scadaboo goes. I really hope so. I mean, I would love for him to go to the Cowboys, but I'm really rooting for him to have a fantastic NFL career one way or the other. So let's see here. Hot Mike User says, do they have the cap space for a big trade? Yeah, those aren't big trades, but I think they can execute those pretty easily. BC3, maybe that's Breece Hall. Maybe he's hanging out. Says, wide receivers are bigger need than running back right now. Having Tolbert as your wide receiver 2 is very alarming. I agree. Mostly, and I don't mean to light this discussion up, but mostly because running backs don't matter. We obviously agree that running backs matter. I'm not saying that they don't, but because you did invest in the offensive line with your first round pick, you have already in that sense helped the run game, right? Tyler Booker should be the rising tide that helps lift the boats, so to speak. You haven't done anything from a pass game perspective, but I think it's important to note that this edge rusher group now is elite. To talk about the actual players on the team, because we're talking about speculatory and hypothetical situations or trades or things that could materialize somewhere down the road, but if we're talking about players on the team, this edge rush group, I mean, it was down last year, and DeMarcus Lawrence missed time, and I know that people don't like to talk about him positively anymore. Still nothing in terms of other picks, but that being said, Micah Parsons is your top edge rusher. That goes without saying. Marshawn Nealon in year 2. Sam Williams coming back off the torn ACL. Donovan Ezeiruaku. This and Dante Fowler coming back. I mean, that is a group. And you obviously kept Osa Odighizuwa in the fold. Mozzie Smith is Mozzie Smith. We don't have to, have the discussion a million times. Solomon Thomas joins the team this offseason. I mean, that front is pretty formidable, and it has some really young guys, some really young players. Again, the Sam Williams coming back from the ACL thing is difficult, but you're talking about Marshawn Nealon entering year 2. Obviously, you're talking about now Ezeiruaku entering year 1. So you have these young guys who are hungry and who have an opportunity to prove themselves and who can learn from Micah Parsons. I mean, Micah has talked so much about wanting to become a leader and not only talked about becoming a leader, but proven that he is a leader. And now you're giving him some actual soldiers to fall in line behind him. And so I'm a big fan of the way the Cowboys are working this group. I think that Matt Eberflus is really set up to succeed really well. And I think, the Cowboys are very transparent sometimes with what they say in press conferences, and particularly with what they say in the pre-draft press conference. And they have talked about having a level of concern in having a different defensive coordinator for a third straight year. Obviously, Dan Quinn in 23, and time before that, Mike Zimmer last year, and now Matt Eberflus. And so you've got to restock those shelves. And that is true at running back and wide receiver as well. And so I really like that. And I really, really like the Shavon. I think the corner, if we look at the three positions the Cowboys have addressed, and certainly if we just look at the two that they addressed on Friday night specifically, corner was the biggest need, right? Like, I think we felt, if I asked you on Thursday morning, of these three positions, which one do you feel the worst about on the Cowboys roster? Interior offensive line, edge rusher, corner. Your answer would have been corner. And the reason for that is because we don't know what's going to happen with Trayvon Diggs, when he's going to play, when he's going to come back, what he's going to look like. We don't know the long-term future there. We don't know if they're going to get an extension done with Deron Bland. So Jordan Lewis is gone, right? Like, when it came to the interior of the offensive line, we felt like, okay, well, Brock Hoffman and TJ Bass are options. When it came to edge rusher, we felt like, well, Sam Williams is coming back. When it came to corner, it was a matter of, well, I guess Kalen Carson is the answer, right? Like, so the Cowboys have, I would offer that they did, corner doesn't feel like the same level of need as receiver or running back, but it was. Again, all the mocks and conversations that we had in the pre-draft process, we said that the Cowboys absolutely had to address running back, receiver, and corner with their top 100 picks. Now, they did not do that. That is beyond obvious at this point in time, but they did address corner. They did address a position of need. And so in that respect, I think they deserve, I think we need to back off the, like, you're not addressing the positions of need thing, beyond the fact that I don't want them to come into a draft and address the positions of need. I would offer that, one of the worst drafts they've had in recent memory happened because of that exact philosophy. If you rewind the clock 3 years, in 2022, that was the offseason in which Lyle Collins was cut, which the Randy Gregory deal fell apart, and obviously the offseason in which they traded away Amari Cooper. And so what did the Cowboys do with their first three picks? They took Tyler Smith, the Lyle Collins replacement. They took Sam Williams, the Randy Gregory replacement, and they took Jalen Tolbert, the Amari Cooper replacement. I don't mean apples to apples, but I mean, quantitatively, those were the replacements. And Tyler Smith worked out great. He was also the first round pick of that group. And Sam Williams has shown moments, but I don't know that anybody would say that that pick has worked out, even injury aside. And the Jalen Tolbert pick certainly hasn't worked out. So when you draft for need, when you force that issue, when you press in that aggressive way, it can really blow up in your face. And so I applaud the Cowboys for not doing that. And I think Donovan Ezeiruaku and Shavon Revel are great examples of just letting the board fall to them. That is the way you should approach this. But because you're going to approach the draft this way, you have to take care of business in free agency in a more aggressive way than you just did. That has to be the lesson that this team comes away with. Or you have to be willing to spend future capital to trade for veteran help, whether that's Breece Hall or George Pickens or any other name that you want to throw out. Let's see here. BC3 says quarterback was a huge need. Glad we got Revel. Absolute steal. Agreed. Jay Cabrera 2355 says same question with running backs Martinez, Etienne, Blue. At this moment in time, let's see here. If we look at Dane Brugler's big board, or not his big board, but if we look at his running back rankings, man, Caleb Johnson, what a steal for Pittsburgh. I don't think Dylan Sampson got drafted, if I'm missing. But RJ Harvey, Trevor Etienne still out there, obviously. Tootin still out there. His name was being floated out a lot on what's today, Friday, by a lot of people. So maybe, but again, the fact that the Cowboys are going to have to wait the whole fourth round now certainly, puts that a little bit in jeopardy. Damian Martinez is a name. I mean, I think if we're presuming the Cowboys wait until the fifth round to pick if they don't trade up in the fourth round. And I don't think it's fair to assume that they're going to trade up. If they're going to trade somewhere, it has to be for veteran help at this point in time. I think that's the more responsible thing to do. I agree with you, Jay Cabrera, that Tootin won't make it to the fifth round. So trading up is a bad idea at this point in time. But if one of these guys makes it, yeah, I think it's worth, it's worth that pick. And you might as well at this point trade next year's fourth, for the Breece Hall pick or whatever you're thinking about doing. And, that would not, I mean, we're kind of used to it at this point in time. So I guess it wouldn't, fully bother me, but ultimately if we look at this from a total perspective, the Cowboys have gotten a lot better on Friday night. Now, I know that there are some people who are still out on the Tyler Booker pick, but on Friday night, while they did not, and I will stand on that business, that it was a failure to not address these positions in a more serious way. I really like what they did. And again, I will give them the out. If their approach was, okay, we're not going to address these positions, running back and receiver in free agency, because we're thinking that maybe in the first 2 rounds, we're going to take Ted McMillan and Quinshawn Judkins. Let's just be hypothetical. Okay, that doesn't happen. Those players aren't available to you. So what do? You say, okay, well, then our plan is, since we're not addressing those positions seriously in free agency, and we get sniped and we can't draft those players in the first and second round, we'll go other directions. We'll let the board fall to us, and we'll trade. We'll trade for some veterans. We'll trade for Breece Hall. We'll trade for George Pickens. We'll do that. That's our get out of jail free card that we're going to burn right now. If that's the case and you want to do that, great. Then let's see it, because right now you've done 2/3 of the process in an elite way. I will say that, in an elite way. But the other third is so bad that it's really weighing down the overall grade that I want to give you. I want to say that you are operating elite. But this third is hanging down so low that these two aren't able to shine as much. So we have some time, obviously, to see what the Cowboys are going to do, how they're going to do it, who they're going to trade for, if they're going to trade for anybody. If they don't trade for anybody, like I said, if we are sitting here tomorrow on, well, it'd be a little bit earlier, but you get my point. If after the NFL draft is over and they have not, by way of any measure, addressed running back or wide receiver, it's open season. I mean, you can get in line behind me, because I will be very, very, very upset with them. But as of now, I'm very fine with this. I'm very good with this, especially addressing corner, like we said. The Shavon Revel pick might be the best one, just because it helps in terms of positional need. You had a need there if you're the Cowboys, and so this checks that box. It checks the box of getting great value. It checks the box of, and the other thing here is, you may not put a lot of stock into this, but it seems that the Cowboys do. They are seemingly very focused on leaders and high quality, people, leadership qualities, responsible players, whatever. And it does sort of feel similar to the Jason Garrett, right kind of guys days. And I'm not saying that the Cowboys really deviated from that in the Mike McCarthy era. But it is very, very, very clear that is an important quality for the Cowboys. It is very, very, very clear here. If we look at just these 3 picks, the Tyler Booker pick, the Donovan Ezeiruaku pick, and the Shavon Revel pick, that the Cowboys want players who not only will lead, but who will triumph over adversity, who will not back down to challenges. And you could argue that that's necessary. Obviously, playing for the Cowboys, it's a little bit different, and the obstacles and whatnot that come with it, the attention, it's not always good. We all know that. I mean, they are clearly remaking this locker room in a very specific image. I think there's enough data at this point in time to really kind of see that. I see UBC3 says, if Revel didn't have any injuries, easy late first round pick. Yeah, I agree with that. Let's see. Josiah Stewart went to the Rams. Okay. So, I mean, my hat's off to if we're grading just the draft, my hat's off to the Cowboys. I think they've done a wonderful job. I think they've done a fantastic job. I think they've done a phenomenal job. And it's just time to go address those other areas. That's your homework, Cowboys. You did wonderfully, but you got to go do these things. You have to do them. You can't leave this weekend without that being done. If you take care of those things, we'll throw you a pizza party. I promise. We will sing your songs. We will give you your flowers. We will clap. We will cheer. We will dance. I mean, we'll do the whole thing. We'll have a big old party, like I said, but you have to do those things. Those are the only 2 areas where you're lacking. And then throw your darts, your day 3 darts, wherever you want. Draft a quarterback, whatever, even though you got Joe Milton already. Like, you can do whatever you want, but you have to do these things in order for this whole thing to make sense. And it makes a lot of sense already, but these things are critical. They're pivotal. You can't just say, Dak and CD, go save us. It can't be that again. You cannot go down that road. And if you do, you will undo all of this goodwill that you're building up with how you're behaving like competent adults over the course of this offseason. So that is my challenge to the Dallas Cowboys. I think it's one that we can all get on board with. My name is RJ Ochoa. I'll be live here in the Bleacher Report app on Saturday following the conclusion of the NFL draft to talk about the Cowboys draft class as a whole. I'm also live in the Bleacher Report app. Obviously, that's where we'll be on Saturday, every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. These videos all go up after the fact on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. You can see where to follow me on social social media. You can like my Facebook page. That's not on there. Just search for RJ Ochoa. You can search for RJ Ochoa on Blue Sky as well. rj.ochoa@sbnation.com is how you email me. If you are on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe. Those things really help us out. I hope you've enjoyed the draft, and I can't wait to see you on Saturday so we can tie a bow on this whole thing. This has been a lot of fun. I agree with your point, by the way. Jay Cabrera, 2355, says they lost a lot of the leaders in the locker room over the last 2 years, so the strategy makes sense. Get the type of guys that they're going after. Yeah, I mean, it really, really, really does. And so I'm on board. We just need that one thing to work. And if it does, all right. Now we can enjoy football once again. Thanks so much for hanging out, everybody. Can't wait to see you on Saturday, and have a good rest of your Friday night.